In a world where insanity reigns supreme and safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, it's comforting to know an ancient, fat, long-haired, bearded reprobate has your mind in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, and despite every attempt by the SHR Media Network to revoke his shameless contract, we return to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon.
I have come here to chew bubble gum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubble.
Am I ever? Welcome. It's great to see you here. Great to have you back. Already we have a person in the chat room, Whiskey Dale. What a guy. I think you're going to enjoy this show. Let's do it. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to BZ's That's Me, the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, where I'm still broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, always spelled over the K, but no longer from downtown Sacramento in the original SHR Media studios. Instead, my voice emanates from the South Sacramento area, but only for a short time more, maybe about another month or so, pending my final move to a free state. Be forewarned, what you're about to hear for the next 2 hours roughly consists of my opinion and no one else's. The Saloon, of course, is serving stiff drinks, facts, history, logic, rationality, proportion, context, tradition, intent, and common sense. You gotta remember, here in the Saloon, we don't water our drinks just like we don't water our conversation. Politics, religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law. We talk about it all right here at the Saloon, where the speech is free, but the booze is not. These are the brand new days of 2022, and I am done with bipartisanship or compromise. It's the new age of modern political warfare. And leftists have said, you know what? We're declaring open war on you. 2021 was the year of retribution, revenge, and punishment of conservatives by Democrats. Let there be no mistake. I love my country, but I abjure its leftist leaders and anybody who won't put American or lawful citizens first, obey the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, uphold the rule of law, and embrace due process. Democrats, leftists, and the American media maggots say, that makes me a white supremacist, extremist, a terrorist. If loving my country makes me an extremist, you know what? So be it. So tonight, welcome back. I've got a great guest. We'll be here in just a moment. Actually, he's here. He's listening. But before I do anything else, everybody's gotten used to this, so I think we need to start off in this way.
The Bloviating Zeppelins HeyJackass.com Chicago Death Toll Update. Courtesy of Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot.
Thanks, Mayor Lightfoot. Hey, this is from HeyJackass.com, illustrating Chicago values. Final January totals for, versus 2021. Shot and killed 45. Shot and wounded 182. Total shot 227. Total homicides 50. That's just in the first month of 2022. Week in progress for the lovely city of Chicago. Shot and killed 8, shot and wounded 16, total shot 24, total homicides 9. Year to date, shot and killed 51, shot and wounded 189, total shot 240, total homicides in the wonderful leftist-controlled city of Chicago, ruled by Mayor Lori Lightfoot. 56. Oh, by the way, in Chicago, a person is shot every 3 minutes and 17 seconds, and a person is murdered every 15 minutes and 11 seconds. Way to go.
The Bloviating Zeppelins HeyJackass.com Chicago Death Toll Update. Courtesy of Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot.
Thanks, Mayor Lori, for keeping it real. And tonight, Spreaker killed me a couple of weeks ago. Spreaker is back. I just want to give everybody an update. All the shows have been repaired. All the shows have been fixed. I thought that I was hacked, but I was not. It turns out that Spreaker, my audio provider, they're the people that hacked me because they thought I was spam. After, 5, 6, 7 years with them, they thought I was spam. No. Again, still, the show from now on until I get to a free state is going to be audio only. It worked well last Thursday night with Lonnie Poindexter and Sergeant John Rick Baker about his book, Vice, about Compton PD. Crossing your fingers. Hoping it's going to be a great show tonight. Well, I'm sure it will be because I have a great guest. Exactly a week ago, I spoke to the former owner of the SHR Media Network, Sean Lewis, about his new career, that of trucking. Well, he's been writing about his career change on Twitter. You can find him on Twitter at Greenhorn Trucks, all one word, Greenhorn Trucks, plural. And he describes his page as just a middle-aged man who changes careers midlife and is now documenting it for everyone to laugh at. Well, as people know, I can't leave. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell everybody. And I always do it on social media. So if you want to find my shows, you can find them by date. I hate that when other people have a show or a podcast and they don't put the date of the podcast. And I like to date mine also as well. So today, Tuesday night, is February the 1st, 2022. I didn't screw that up. I'm shocked. Normally, I have a terrible time with February. Do you guys pronounce it like that? February, the first, the year of our Lord, 2022. Anyway, Sean Lewis was on last Tuesday, a week ago, about his midlife career change. And as people know, because of him and a whole lot of other people, I cannot leave social media alone. And as I've described a bunch of times, I have met a really good number of guests on my show and brought them to the show. I've met them on social media and brought them to the show, either directly from social media or references from one person on social media to another. And of course, when you're in social media, if you work it, looking at one person leads to looking at somebody else, examining other people who have similar interests or political topics, or somebody who followed somebody, and then miraculously you want to see what kind of a person they are. Then you go to their page and you find out, shoot, man, they're as interesting as the person I was looking at, if not more. So then you ask yourself, I ask myself, I wonder, would they talk about their interests or their jobs or involvements or their politics on my show? And it's weird. In most cases, now I have had some people refuse. In most cases, the answer is a resounding yes. About 99% of the cases, people say, oh, okay, all right. So actually, it's a great source for meeting new people, which is at least half the fun of doing my show. So tonight, I have a brand new guest whom I met in basically the same fashion, reading Sean's page about trucking, and then going over to this gentleman's own page on Twitter. As Sackhead Sean told us about his new profession, trucking, he gave us some insight into just how some of the trucking sausage is made last week. It was a great show. A week ago, literally Tuesday. And if you want to hear it, I'd refer you back to my blog page, bloviatingzeppelin.net, where you can go back and listen to the show with Sean. But our guest tonight has a different perspective, and I'd really like to hear it because he too is in trucking, only he's from Canada, and Canada is certainly in the world's eye these days because of the trucking convoy. Well, I hope to get into all of that tonight and more. So I'd like to introduce a man who is speaking to us tonight directly from Canada, KYLE Johnston, who is a heavy haul trucker and oddly enough has the Twitter handle of Canada Heavy Haul. Imagine that. So, KYLE Johnston, thank you for being here tonight. Welcome to the Saloon and greetings, sir.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate you reaching out to me.
I tell everybody customarily that I have a bunch of pages of questions. Always over-prepare. Always have more questions than your guest can possibly answer. So I have a ton of questions for you tonight. And it's like any other time that I'm here with a first-time guest. It's like a little journey, and I think it's going to be a little journey tonight.
Yeah, no, like I said there when we were talking earlier today, best thing to have is an open conversation, so don't be afraid to ask me anything, right?
Okay, great. Anyway, when I was promoting the show, I described it as talking about trucking in general, about the job, who it appeals to, and specifically with regard to KYLE, heavy haul trucking, and of course the topic a whole bunch of people are discussing now, the Canadian Convoy, fax mandates, what it all means, and more. So during the course of the show, I have some stories that I'd like to refer to and some audio cuts that I'd like to play. But I'd also like to address why the job of trucking and why the support of truckers is absolutely critical to the survival of our nations, Canada and the United States, as we're now beginning to understand. Well, wait, BZ, stop. Everybody knows that historically I've tried to appeal to the trucking community, and I got a good deal of my podcast hits from truckers listening to me at their convenience at night during the day. I got a whole ton of hits from truckers listening to the podcasts. And I've said on my prior shows, I've also received some emails back when I actually used to give my email address out, because then my email became just clogged with people ranting F and S words at me. But back when I used to give my email address out, I found out that there were a ton of truckers that would listen to me live late at night, mostly on the East Coast, I discovered, and some from the Midwest, not so many from the West Coast, from California and the western states. And it made me glad to realize that they appreciated the show. So I meant it then, a couple of years ago, and I mean it now. Truckers, you keep America moving now more than ever. So I want to emphasize that, but this is nothing new. My appreciation for truckers. They've always been there. They've always been transporting your goods. They've been doing it day and night, and only now do we finally begin to have a semblance of an appreciation for their job and what they're doing, which is why, like Sean, I'm speaking to another trucker tonight, KYLE Johnston, who is a Canadian heavy haul trucker. And like I said, boy, do I have a lot of questions for him tonight, and dovetailing with the show I did with Sean. And the interesting thing is, I found KYLE through Sean. My understanding is Sean either called you or talked to you or sent you a tweet or something like that, letting you know that he knew that you were going to be on the show tonight.
In a roundabout way, yeah. I actually contacted him after you contacted me because, like I said earlier, this is the first time I've ever done a show like this, right? So I was just getting kind of information about how it's done, right?
Oh, absolutely wonderful. There are no secrets in trucking, folks. Just thought I'd tell you there are no secrets in trucking. So, KYLE Johnston, where did you grow up in Canada? Let's kind of start at the start.
Yeah, by all means. I grew up in a small little town, like I'm talking tiny. It had less than 500 people in northern Alberta, up close to the oil sands. Some of your listeners may know what that is. Basically what it is they extract the oil out of the sand, and then they refine it and then make it into gas and everything, like the normal process, right? Grew up there, probably almost from birth until I was about 18 years old is when I finally moved out of my parents' place.
What a lot of people don't know about Alberta, and if people know something about Canada, they know about Quebec. They know about probably British Columbia because it's closer to the West Coast. I've been up to BC myself to go to Quadra Island and a couple of other cool places. Beautiful, beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. What you guys don't know about Alberta, though, is that it is essentially the state that keeps all of Canada going, okay? That's where the oil comes from. That's where the industry is. And if it wasn't for Alberta, you wouldn't have a lot of the cool shit that you have, Canadians, because of that state. Just thought I'd tell you.
Yeah, and to be fair, there's a lot of oil and gas that come out of Saskatchewan and Manitoba as well, but the bulk of it is Alberta.
There you go. Exactly. So you're living in Canada now then?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. May I ask what general area or town?
I live about, probably within a 40-mile radius of the capital city of Alberta, which is Edmonton.
Okay. All righty. Well, KYLE Johnston, what's your background? Did you always want to be in trucking?
Actually, I did. I'm a third-generation truck driver, so my dad drove truck for about 25, 26 years, and my grandfather drove truck till the day he died. As I was growing up, though, my parents kind of pushed me away from trucking because they kind of had a hard go of it. So I actually became a firefighter for about 4 years. I wasn't a big fan of that, so I switched into the trades and became a welder. And I did that for, about 12 years. And then I finally just gave up and said I want to follow my passion and became a truck driver.
So it sounds like, KYLE Johnston, you're kind of a hands-on guy. You're kind of an industrial guy. And I find this very interesting. People that are truckers, a certain percentile of them, a fairly large percentile of them, I've discovered, come from a family of truckers. Would that be kind of true for the folks that you know in trucking?
You know what? Probably about 85% of the people I know and or meet is a family thing. You know, their parents were truck drivers or their uncles or their aunts or whoever. There's very few people I have met that just wanted to drive a truck and they're the first one in their family to do it, right? I think it's just because, I hate to use the word boomers, but I think because boomers, that's the typical job they did back in the 70s, 80s, early 90s, right? So I think that's where it all kind of became such a big thing.
As I said for tonight, I'd like to discuss the profession, the ins and outs of it, things people who want to get into it should expect, things they don't expect, how things really work in trucking, and the background, maybe expand into the state of trucking today, why it's critically important, because people are finally paying attention to it, and why it's critically important for any nation to support their transportation system and their truckers who bring you, everything, folks, everything. I want to make this observation, and then I will move on. For those people who hate the diesel engine or hate the diesel-electric combination, I want to tell you, folks, how about 90% of your shit got to you wherever you are right now, whatever nation you're in, whatever state you're in. You got it this way. You got it when containers were put on a massive ship that was powered by a diesel engine to an electric final transmission. Then that big-ass ship got into a port, and it unloaded those containers by diesel trucks. And then those trucks and containers were put onto locomotives on huge trains, and they were sent all over your nation. And those locomotives were powered by diesel engines as well, also with an electric final transmission. And then from terminal points, they were placed onto trucks which are diesel engines. So you want to go ahead and eliminate the diesel engine? Yeah, GFL with that. I'm sorry, just an interjection, just an observation from a guy that actually knows how things work. So anyway, KYLE Johnston. The other thing I'd like to discuss tonight is talk about the issue of shortages in trucking, in driving, in the supply chain, and what you may happen to see in reality every day, because I think there's a great deal of difference between what people think trucking is about and what it truly is about, and who would better know than one of the people who actually do the job, which is why I asked KYLE Johnston to be here tonight. And before I forget, also, you can read about Kyle's exploits, his trucking tales on Twitter. You can find him, just like I did, at Canada Heavy Haul. At, all one word, at Canada Heavy Haul. Great place, great Twitter site. I think you guys will really enjoy it. So before you got into trucking, did you have any experience with driving, for example?
Yes, I did. A lot of my family farm as well, right? We're pretty, salt of the earth people. So I always used to help during the summers when I was off school with, spring seeding and harvest and stuff. I'd drive the tractors and trucks and haul bales off the field and all that. So I've been, driving a quote-unquote truck since I was about 12 years old. So I've always had that experience with it. And like I said, my dad driving truck, I always used to go with him since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, correct? So it's always been a part of my life.
Well, that's cool. So you decided apparently fairly early that, I want to get into trucking. So one of the first questions that I asked Sean is, he said he knew he wanted to go to trucking school. Did you go to trucking school for that?
No, I did not. Since I had the experience from farming, they kind of have in Canada anyways, they kind of have like an exemption program if you're a farmer. Since they all know that you've been driving since you were, could reach the pedal, they pretty much took me out and gave me like a quick little evaluation, I guess you could say. And I think I was out for about an hour. I came back. I asked the examiner how I did. He says, we can book your test next week. Let's get it done. A week later, I had the instructor come out, or the examiner, sorry, and did the hour-long road test. And he said, you passed. Here's your license. Have a good life.
Cool. Very nice. So that certainly made it interesting and a little easier for you because you had a little bit of a stream to keep going. If folks are not in Canada, if folks don't have that kind of a background, is the path that a lot of people choose to go to a trucking school?
I firmly believe in getting as much education experience as you can before you go for the test and before you get out on the highway. So I think a trucking school, especially a reputable one, would be highly beneficial for you to go and at least ask the questions, right? I mean, I even now with the experience I have, I still ask questions because I don't know everything, but I'm pretty sure I can find somebody who does know the answer I'm looking for, right? So, I highly suggest at least going to the school and asking the questions, what can I do? What do I need? What kind of experience are you looking for before I apply? That sort of stuff.
Okay, folks, we're speaking to KYLE Johnston tonight. He's a heavy haul trucker in Canada, and you can find him on Twitter, as I indicated, at Canada Heavy Haul, at Canada Heavy Haul. Now, I know you can't mention some company names, but were there some that you worked your first jobs with? In other words, some of your earlier jobs, your first jobs, were they with major companies, with the full-size Kenworth Peterbilt truck, or did you start somewhere else or some other way?
So that's actually one thing I do want to, explain. Where I started out, because of the experience I already had, I started out with a gravel company driving dump truck with a full-size Kenworth T800 pulling pups and stuff, which is like one of those small little dump trailers. Eventually worked my way up to hauling like all the equipment around the city, and then from there I moved on to highway jobs. They don't do it the way they used to. Like when my dad started driving truck, they used to you get your, we call it a class 1, which in the States is called a CDL.
Mm-hmm.
You would get your CDL. They would put you into like a little 5 or 6 ton body job, get you to do local P&D, right? And then they would move you up into like a 10 ton body job, do the same thing, maybe go outside the city a couple hours and then come back. And it kind of progress your way up to into the bigger and bigger stuff. One thing I have noticed in the last probably 10 years, because there is such a shortage for drivers, more and more inexperienced guys are getting thrown into the heavier stuff and going into the more treacherous roads, I should say. Well, maybe not treacherous, but more skill-demanding roads. Excuse me.
Well, okay, so let me back up and get a more umbrella type question. So, KYLE Johnston, how many years have you been in trucking?
6 years now since I got my license, almost 7.
Okay, and you are a heavy haul trucker right now, but apparently that's, I would guess, you're going to tell me, but I guess that's something that you work up to. You don't just get into trucking as a newbie and then somebody looks at you and decides, you know, mate, you'd be a great person for a heavy haul trucker. So what did you have to do to get up and work into that? Because I'm assuming in the trucking world, a heavy haul trucker is something that you aspire to or want to be.
Yeah, so I definitely worked my way up into it. It's a mixture of skill set, experience, confidence, and a lot of luck. So basically being at the right place at the right time. So like I said, I started with the gravel company, then I went to a highway company, which did deck work. Then I went to a company out of Calgary, Alberta, and that was actually my first cross-border company. And they had a heavy haul division. So as soon as I got hired on, I told them I wanted to try and get into that division. So basically what they did is they would start me out on, like, you know, small oversized or small loads that are really heavy or over-length loads, and kind of progress my way up until I got into the heavy haul division, and I got up to pulling their biggest trailers, their baddest trailers, and hauling their biggest loads.
And I would assume in the world of trucking, KYLE Johnston, that's something that a trucker aspires to for 2 reasons. Number one, it's a bigger or greater challenge. And number 2, I'm guessing it pays better?
It's the challenge for me. Definitely, I do like the challenge. The pay is better. It depends on the company you go to as well. I mean, some companies, they pay really well for their LTL, which is, you know, as you may know, is just small packages with multiple picks and drops, or you fill up your trailer with like 10 or 15 drops. Some of those loads pay more than what I've hauled. But I think it's a challenge mostly is why people aspire to it. It's one of those things where you can tell people, you know, I've hauled the biggest thing you've ever seen. I'm the one who drove that, right? It's like people going up on the ice roads in northern Canada. A lot of people go up there for the challenge and just to say they've done it, right?
Folks, we're speaking to KYLE Johnston tonight. He's a heavy haul trucker from Canada. We're going to get into the trucker convoy. That's something that I hope he has some great insight into. That's one of the major reasons that I wanted to talk to him tonight. But just also because he's kind of a semi-buddy of Sackhead Sean, who's a new trucker, and because I just want to have a different perspective of trucking from Canada. We've got about 2 more minutes before the bottom of the hour break, so I think I have enough time to ask one more question, which is, when you begin in the heavy haul world, what kinds of things do you begin with? And then after we come back from the break, I'm going to ask you to give me examples of some of the crazy things that you may have hauled. But when you begin heavy hauling stuff, what kind of weight are we talking about, and what kind of things are we talking about?
Well, I'll be quick since we're almost at your break there. Basically, like big 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13 axle trailers, Shirley trailers, Goldhofer trailers, hauling turbines, chassis for the big haul trucks up north, 25-foot wide boxes, that kind of stuff, right? A lot of the loads I haul, I weigh more empty than most loaded trucks do. Like reefers and stuff and dry vans, their GBW is 80,000 pounds. I weigh, with a 13 axle on the truck I drove, I weigh about 105,000 pounds empty, right? So it's just one of those things where it's neat to haul them, basically.
It's got to be a great challenge. And, folks, we're talking to KYLE Johnston. He's on Twitter at Canada Heavy Haul. Canada Heavy Haul. We're going to take a break. I'll be right back. I'm going to go get a little rock star thingy to keep me awake. And if you need to go to the electric winkle chamber, folks, now is a great time because we'll be right back with KYLE Johnston right after this. Don't go away, please. Stay right here.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, are you guys listening? This is Shannon from Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media. I know you've been wondering where we are and what's been going on. Well, folks, that's right. We're back. So please join us 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday on SHR Media, on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, and Facebook Live at 11 a.m. on Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM at Facebook. You don't want to miss a minute. We've got lots of guests, lots of segments, and lots of interesting things. And let's face it, there's nowhere for you to go, so you might as well tune in. Again, Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. We're back live on the air on SHR Media, 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday, audio and Facebook Live, audio and video. Yes, we are going to do video. Facebook Live, Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Hope to see you soon.
Want to make an immediate difference in the life of a critically ill child? You have the ability to do that right now. Make a donation to Dream Makers for Life, the organization that restores dreams to seriously ill children and their families. You can sponsor a dream pack for a child, which contains a clear PVC backpack, a dry erase board adventure coloring book, a journal, and dry erase markers to inspire a critically ill child to envision a future adventure and hope. Want to become a dream maker for life yourself? Go to dreamforlife.org. That's dreamforlife.org. Help a child. Help a family. There is always hope.
Unleashed Jeremy Hansen, the most explosive pro-American podcast on the planet. Pro-MAGA, pro-Trump, pro-conservative. Come join the resistance. Fight for what really matters in America. 5 p.m. Central on UJHLive.com, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Pandora, or MAGAbook.com. Come join the resistance and fight for America. Unleashed Jeremy Hansen.
Do you value yourself, your family, your friends? Want to know more about how to survive, thrive, and stay alive in these dynamic times? Listen to Around the Campfire with Kate, Thursday nights and Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Central, only on PSN TV. That's Around the Campfire with Kate. News that nobody in the MSM wants to report. Remember, train hard, train smart to survive, thrive, and stay alive.
And we're back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
That was the first half hour of the show down already. My guest tonight is KYLE Johnston. Johnston, not Johnstone, dummy. Learn to read, learn to spell. He's on Twitter at Canada Heavy Haul, at Canada Heavy Haul. By the way, folks, you can follow me on Twitter at BZEP, at BZEP. And if you would, share the show tonight on Spreaker. Share and share alike. Please hit share. And if you listen to the show later in podcast, hey, share the show all over if you would, please. Because what I do, I will put up the podcast of this show later on in all the social media. My God, talk about social media. I'm in probably 6 or 7 or 8 various forms of social media all over the place. And I honestly don't know how long I'm going to be on Twitter, and my half-life is probably even less on Facebook because I'm getting cut off at the slats on Facebook with greater frequency, and I'm going to have to find some other place to live because Facebook certainly isn't it. Anyway, KYLE Johnston is in Canada. He is a Canada heavy hauler, and I'm speaking to him tonight because I want to talk about just generally trucking and also about what's been happening with the Canadian Convoy. And I'm going somewhere with this. Like I say, this is a journey, folks. Go on the journey with me, if you would. What are employers, so Kyle, what are employers looking for when they're looking for somebody to haul big stuff?
Mostly experience, for obvious reasons, right? They can't just let a greenhorn out with $1 million piece of equipment, right? And that's just the truck and trailer combination. I'm not talking about the, $2, $3, $4 million load that's going on it. Looking for confidence, not being afraid to take the bull by the horns and, bring the bull down to the ground. And being able to work with others, I think, is another big thing. Because when you're in the heavy haul industry, you're constantly working with pilot cars, you're constantly working with police escorts, you're constantly working with permit officers and state officials and border crossings, and it's just a whole conglomerate of people you got to work with. So if you're like a happy-go-lucky person such as myself, and you can get along with everybody with minimal to no issues, I think that's another thing they really strive to have in a heavy haul driver.
So I asked you before the break, or I said before the break, that I'm going to be asking you, so I'll ask it now. What's some of the biggest and the coolest stuff you've hauled?
So I guess the biggest I've hauled is probably a grader out of Illinois. The biggest grader Caterpillar makes, which is a 24M. They're about 48 feet long, so 13 some odd feet high. They weigh about 140,000 pounds, and that's with no blade, no tires on it, no handrails. Like they disassemble a lot of it and just have the main unit on my trailer. So that would be, that'd probably be one of the heaviest things I've hauled. Also one of the longest. I was about 160 feet long doing that. Probably the coolest thing I've hauled. Oh, I'd have to think about that, because I did haul something, but I can't quite remember what it was. The honest with you, I've done so many.
Or maybe the oddest, the strangest thing you've hauled.
Okay, the strangest thing I've hauled. Probably, you know what, I don't even think I've hauled anything that strange. It's not in my book.
Huh, okay.
I've hauled compressors 25 feet high. A lot of boxes out of off the Mexican border there in Texas. Those are about 24 feet wide. Geez, I just hauled something really cool there too, and I can't remember what the heck it was. I apologize for that.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. Well, it sounds like you literally have been all over Canada, and then ranging all through the United States. You mentioned Texas, so you're not limited. You go all over the place.
I've been, like I said, as far south as the Mexican border, and I've been as far north as Fairbanks, Alaska, and everywhere in between, right? Actually, that's what it was. I hauled a big pipe rack up to Fairbanks, and that was actually probably one of the best trips I've ever done, is going up that way.
The industry is trying to get more people into trucking. Hell, everybody is trying to get people back into employment. I talked to Sean a week ago, last Tuesday, and he went through trucking school, and he said, of all the people who went through trucking school, and he had about 10 or so, how many graduated? He said, me and another guy. And then I said, okay, well then how many passed their test? And he said, me and another guy. And I said, the washout rate is that great? And he says, yeah, we're having a hell of a time trying to get people into truckers for the first time. Well, clearly that's the way it is down in the States. What's the situation up in Canada with regard to that?
The situation's pretty much the same. I think that's why there's a big push for having like the automatic transmissions in the trucks, because nobody really knows how to drive the big standards anymore. Because it is a skill to drive them, especially if you get into what I'm doing, where you end up with, you have a main a main transmission, then you have an auxiliary transmission, which is called like an 18 and 2 or an 18 and 4. So instead of just having your normal gears, you have a whole other transmission you have to shift as well. So it's just one of those things where I think it's really hard for people to kind of wrap their head around how it works. And also, being that big is really daunting for people, which I understand, right? Especially if you're going from, just driving a little Volkswagen around all day and then hopping into a 75-foot long vehicle, right?
That's actually one of the biggest challenges that I didn't sit down and talk to you at length about stuff that I used to do. But KYLE Johnston, I was in law enforcement for 41 years. I worked federally, and then I worked for a state agency and a couple of county agencies here in California, always spelled with a K. One of the things that I did is I taught EVOC. I was always in training in law enforcement, or a trainer, I should say, in law enforcement. And I taught EVOC, which is the Emergency Vehicle Operations course, where you teach emergency responders, cops, and firefighters how to drive big apparatus. And I also taught motorcycles, motor officers, and I also taught new kids how to get into law enforcement automobiles and to drive in Code 3 and or in pursuit. That was tough because, like you just mentioned, their form of reference, their world was a little teeny automatic automobile if they drove at all. And then you took somebody that hasn't been challenged like that, put them into an automobile, and during the academy you expect them to attain speeds of 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, running Code 3, lights and siren, but you have to obey, you have to clear intersections and whatnot, and then try to teach them safe, cogent pursuit tactics. It's tough because your gene pool today is not the gene pool that it was 20 years ago, which isn't the gene pool that it was 40 years ago in the 70s when I first got into law enforcement. It's changed a lot.
I mean, even try and find a vehicle that even has a standard transmission nowadays, like even just like a little 5-speed or something, right? It's just the way we're progressing further and further away from, I guess, the roots of what we come from, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but if you want to get into an industry such as trucking that still has this old, I shouldn't say old, but older technology, it's really hard to get people to figure it out, right? And then I'm no fault of their own. I mean, if they've never seen a standard transmission in their life, and then they hop into an 18-wheeler and they're looking at this big gear shift and they're looking at the shift pattern and they see 4 numbers in one slot and they have no idea what it means or even how to shift the gears. I almost feel sorry for them coming into this industry.
There's some huge challenges to being a driver. There are some huge challenges in law enforcement. Hell, there's a huge challenge in owning a restaurant, just trying to get people to work for you. But KYLE Johnston, who is a Canadian heavy haul driver, who we're speaking to tonight, what are some of the things that you think a potential truck driver needs to keep him or her in the profession? Because I came up with a list, and you tell me if I'm anywhere near the mark on this. I thought the things that a good truck driver should be are flexible. You should be able to work by yourself. You should have a good sense of logistics. You should have a good sense of planning and organization. And I think mostly, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, you need to have a big sense of independence about you. Am I kind of close?
Yeah, you pretty much hit all the nail on the head. Like, you definitely have to be flexible because you never know what's going to come at you out on the road. But you also have to follow a plan. Like, especially with heavy haul, I plan my whole trip out before I'm even loaded, where I'm going to stop, my permit routing, this and that. And then you also have to kind of plan around in case something pops up. You get stuck at a scale or you hit a storm or whatever, it pushes you back. You definitely have to be able to work by yourself. If you're a social butterfly, I'm sorry, this isn't the job for you. You're in the truck 70 hours a week by yourself. I shouldn't say at least. Excuse me. Yeah, 70 hours a week by yourself. The only interaction you get with people is at truck stops, or if you decide to get a hotel for the night. Planning logistics. Yeah, you definitely have to plan ahead and figure out what you're going to do, like I said, with the flexibility. Especially in heavy haul, if anything happens, like a snowflake could shut you down for 5 days. So you have to plan around that, be able to make that destination when you say you're going to be there, and a lot time for that. As for independence, yes and no. There is a big support system out there for truck drivers, especially with CB radios, and we run BHF radio up here. So you can always, like I said before, you can always ask the question. Everybody I've met out on the road, they are more than willing to help you get along with your journey. If you have a question, 4 or 5 people will jump up and give you a hand. They'll let you know if you have a tire blown out, or, they hear a leak as you're pulling out of the fuel pump, or you forgot something, right? So it's not like you're out there on your own, good luck, have a good day. There is a support system out there, right?
Folks, I'm talking to KYLE Johnston. He's a Canadian heavy haul trucker. And I've got a couple of really great people in my chat room right now. Speaking of chat, if you want to listen to the show, you can go to shrmedia.com, shrmedia.com. Click on Listen Live, and you'll find yourself plunked into the chat room. Whiskey Dale has asked a great question, or made an actual observation. He said one of the things that should be very important in a long-haul trucker, any trucker, would be mechanical aptitude, because I'm sure that mechanical aptitude is a big factor in continuing with your job and your mission.
Yes. I highly recommend bringing like a small toolkit with you. You can get at like a Harbor Freight, or what we have up here is Canadian Tire. They're like $100. You throw it in your truck. It's like a little 100-piece set. You can almost fix anything on your truck on the side of the road, other than like a major repair, like you blew an engine or something, or you lost a tire or something like that. But anything, carry air fittings, carry tire plugs, carry spare rad hoses, spare fuel filters, just little things that will save you from calling a mechanic out and waiting for 6 hours on the side of the road. Prime example, I don't mean to drag on. Prime example, I was bringing a D11 dozer from Regina, Saskatchewan down to Gillette, Wyoming. I blew both my fan belts on the truck on, I think it was Highway 59 in Montana. Yes, there was, because I just turned left and it was headed south. Blew both the fan belts on my truck. So I had spares. 25 minutes later, we're back on the road. Those 2 spare belts and the 25 minutes of me changing the belts on the side of the road saved me about $1,500 for a mechanic to come out and about 6 hours downtime, right?
Holy
crap. Having that aptitude, at least some knowledge of how an engine works and how drivetrain works, will save you a lot of headache. I guess not in the future, but a lot of headache of having a breakdown, right?
Jack Alexander, who's one of the guys that's in the chat room right now, made an observation that I think is very salient. He said, I still think long-haul trucking is a great career for military veterans. They and their families are used to being apart for long periods of time. That would seem to be very applicable as well.
Yeah, it would. I've met a lot of veterans on the road. It's just one of those things where I'm assuming it's because they're just so used to being away from home. It's like we've both mentioned, it's not bad money. And they kind of get to do what they want, especially if they're an owner-operator and they have their own truck. They can pretty much do what they want. They can haul the loads they want. And it's also a sense of brotherhood in the trucking industry. As many of your listeners probably already know, if you're a truck driver, I shouldn't say you're one of us. It's you're part of the group. You're part of the family. You're part of the club kind of thing, right? So just one of those things, lots of times when you see another driver on the road, you always give them a little wave or holler at them on the CB, see how the roads are. So that's probably the biggest reasons a lot of veterans are drawn to this industry.
So, KYLE Johnston, every profession has its etiquette, its constructs, an acknowledged way that do work, that things, they just naturally work this way. And I'm sure trucking is no different. Trucking has etiquette as well. Some of the things that you've seen regarding etiquette, I would guess, fall under the headings of truck stops, workers at terminals, docks, loaders, unloaders, dispatchers, related workers. Is there something in particular, and I didn't get to ask Sean this question because I ran out of time last week. Is there something that's akin to kind of like the biggest no-no in trucking etiquette?
So probably the biggest no-no in etiquette would be don't be rude to everybody. Be courteous, be polite, because everybody has a job to do. We're all out there to make a paycheck, right? If you see somebody on the, broke down on the side of the road, especially if it's another truck driver, at least get on the radio and see if they need a hand. Not necessarily have to pull over and help them, but at least, see if they're okay, see if you can make a phone call or something. Let's see. Truck stops, don't block people in. If you come in late, it's more than once I've had to, get up early in the morning and go knock on people's doors because I can't get out of my stall, right? That's probably one of my biggest pet peeves in the industry, and probably a lot of your listeners will know what I'm talking about. They just come in, don't care where they park, set their brakes, go to bed. They, it's all about me. I don't care about you, right?
I'm laughing because I read Sean's Twitter page. He's at Greenhorn Trucks, and I read his Twitter page because he's a brand new guy in the industry. And I read him because he makes some really interesting observations about being the new guy, and also some observations about there are some really damn stupid people out there. Like the photograph he took of this guy that he's got to leave, but this other guy parked so close that if he tried to get close to this guy's tractor, he'd take off everybody's mirror and probably crack the hood and the fenders and everything like that. So, yeah, that's... Okay, that leads me to this. KYLE Johnston, this leads me to this. And again, I wish I'd gotten the ability to ask Sean this last week, but I didn't. I ran out of time. I'm sure that in your 6+ years driving, and especially driving what you do, you've seen some crazy-ass things from your cab. So if you can you tell me what are some of the craziest or stupidest things you've seen done in front of you when you're driving, and from a regular civilian driver or a fellow trucker? Because I bet you've seen some crazy shit.
Do you want something I've seen while I'm driving or something that I've actually seen in a truck stop? Both are pretty good stories.
Either or both. We got time.
All right. I'll go with the truck stop one because I think that's the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. So I was in Albert Lee, Minnesota. There's a big Petro there. And once again, your listeners probably know exactly where I'm talking about. I pulled in. I was coming out of Georgia going back north into Canada. So I pulled in, grabbed some fuel at the island, went and I parked. And I was sitting there having a cigarette, minding my own business, trucks running, doing its cool down thing. I had the CB on, not paying attention. Then I hear somebody yelling outside my truck. I look up, and there's a guy screaming at this, I think it was a Werner driver. He was, I don't want to say rookie, but he was new, trying to back into a stall. And this one guy was just giving him the gears about how he couldn't back up. And he's probably 4 or 5 truck lengths in front of me, and I can hear every word he's saying. He's yelling so loud. Whatever, none of my business. I don't care. So I just continue on, being on Twitter and stuff, having my cigarette. Next thing I know, I hear him beacon off on the radio. So I look at my radio, and I can see the signal's real strong as he's talking. And in case you don't know, the closer you are to an actual radio that's transmitting, the stronger the signal is on your radio on the receiving end. So I'm looking around to see where he's coming from. He's parked 2 trucks down from me, this guy that was yelling. And he's doing his thing on the radio about how he's such a great guy and he's better than backing up than everybody. These people, most of us call super truckers. Right? They think they're better than everybody else. So anyway, people are chirping him off, like back to him. And one guy comes back and says, "Where are you parked? I'll come and beat your ass." And this guy's dumb enough to tell him, saying, I'm the only cattle truck in the parking lot. Come and find me. So I'm sitting there, I'm lighting another cigarette because I know what's about to go down, right? So I look over, and there's this Andre the Giant-looking guy coming around the corner. Just popped his chest out, everything. The guy in the cattle truck saw him coming, fired his truck up, put it in gear, and gone, and I never saw him again.
Yeah, you don't want to be doing that stuff when you haven't seen who you're talking to. That's kind of silly.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. So probably the craziest thing I've seen was coming through, it was the I-90, and it's coming through Montana. There's a guy, I go on the road. Guy in an SUV, I don't know what his deal was, but I saw him in the mirror, and my rear pilot, actually warned me he was coming up fast. He comes out, he goes around me like I'm stopped, gets going, and I'm thinking, whatever, his business. Come up over the next hill. He must have had a pass I just saw him because he probably rolled 4 or 5 times on the highway. So me and my pilot stop. We get out, rush over, see if he's okay. He ain't breathing. So we call 911. They bring in the air ambulance, and we're doing the best we can. Me being an ex-firefighter, like I mentioned at the start of the show, doing CPR and trying to get his heart going again. And sorry, this kind of one kind of hits me hard. Air ambulance shows up, takes off, gets him out of the car, takes off. And then filling out the police reports, and I hear it come over the radio that he passed away in flight. And of course, my heart sunk because when we got to the scene, of course, there's car seats and stuff in the vehicle, so you know he had kids. And then I was asking the cop, what was his rush? What was he trying to do? And he goes, I don't know, but he was speeding for something, but he obviously didn't make it to where he was going. And that's probably the craziest thing I've seen on the highway. Sorry, that one kind of hits me hard.
No, I understand. I perfectly understand. Because where I used to live up in the Sierra Nevada mountains, I was close to the original transcontinental line. The East-West Railroad tracks that originally belonged to Central Pacific and then to Southern Pacific and then eventually to Union Pacific. So I started becoming interested in railroad history, and I ended up getting a lot of cab rides on locomotives from Southern Pacific engineers and then Union Pacific engineers who took me occasionally from basically Sacramento up through Truckee and then into Reno. And you really weren't supposed to be in the cabs, but I spoke to them a lot. One of the first things I learned about a locomotive engineer is there isn't one locomotive engineer who hasn't killed at least one person, maybe several. And it weighs heavy on them what they see because people are silly enough and stupid enough to stand in front of anywhere from a 12 to 20,000 ton train that takes roughly a mile to stop, depending upon the conditions. And just because someone is selfish enough to step in front of a moving train, it weighs heavily on the minds of all those engineers, and I'm sure it weighs heavily on the minds of those people who are professional drivers like yourself. I think that's time to take a break. I am BZ, the bloviating Zeppelin. You're in the saloon. I'm speaking to KYLE Johnston tonight. We'll be right back after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
It is he that is me, bringing perspective from across the sea. Join me, Jack Alexander, 4 days a week for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the news and issues affecting life and liberty here in the USA. I'll show you what the mainstream media refuses to. Politics, border security, defense, healthcare, travel, nothing is off limits. Catch the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast each Monday to Thursday on Facebook, YouTube, and everywhere good podcasts can be found. Also, check out the website, www.jackalexanderexperiment.com.
Come listen to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, Tuesday and Thursday nights at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, for the best in late-night conservatarian wireless talk radio at shrmedia.com. Raised as a free-range child with dirt and freedom, BZ is broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. Jump into our plush, sumptuous, palatial, and resplendent chat room at shrmedia.com. Now, with 18% more umbrage and 20% more bulbosity than previous shows, and with delicious Liberty additives. Remember, BZ realizes that with great beard comes great responsibility. No chinchillas were harmed, embarrassed, or the focus of any sarcasm whatsoever in the making of this ad.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
After 6 years covering terror and corruption, the Unpleasant Blind Guy is making a change. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker and YouTube through SHR Media and on the Western Free Radio Network as I team up with Jeff Mitchell, host of the English Defense League radio show on blogtalkradio.com. Check show pages for air times. It's the Unpleasant Blind Guy.
On EDL Radio.
There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And I'm back. I'm BZ, the bloviating Zeppelin, and you're not. People are in the chat room. You can be too. Go to shrmedia.com. shrmedia.com, quick like a bunny for all the bulbous political goodness that you can pull out of this show. shrmedia.com. I'm on Twitter. I'm really active on Twitter, at least for the next observable couple of months or so. You can find me there at BZEP, at BZEP, because I'm the bloviating Zeppelin. Tonight in the Saloon, we have KYLE Johnston, who is a Canadian long-haul trucker, and we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of trucking very shortly, the major reason that I wanted to talk to him tonight. But I'm going to, I've got some great audio cuts coming up, but, Twitter is full of crap. There's a lot of crap and a lot of leftists and a lot of jerks on Twitter, but occasionally I find things that are really funny. And then there are things that are just jam-packed with fucking irony that I just love. And I like that. I like irony, and I like schadenfreude. Look it up. So here's a tweet that I found from Justin Trudeau about 8 hours ago. And it said, "This morning, I tested positive for COVID-19. I'm feeling fine, and I'll continue to work remotely this week while following public health guidelines. Unlike my stupid governor, Gavin Newsom, who likes to jaunt around with no mask on and tells me, wags my finger in my face and says, put your mask on, which I don't. Anyway, the tweet from Justin Trudeau said, hey, everybody, please get vaccinated and boosted. Well, there's another guy that I follow called Dr. David Samadi. And he replied to Justin Trudeau, and he says, you know, sometimes having COVID makes you feel like you just got hit by a truck. Now, if I had a producer, what you would have heard was, just got hit by a truck. But I don't have a producer, it's just me, and by the way, that's not what you heard. Then there's this. I find this very interesting, and this is one of the questions I want to ask KYLE Johnston here in a moment. Well, hell, I'll ask you now. Our media, Kyle, in the U.S. is basically poo-pooing Canada's trucker convoy, and they're calling it of all things, they're calling it a cult. So this is MSNBC. I can't think of her name. It'll come to me. But this is from a video cut from MSNBC, and now there's this leftist chick on MSNBC referring to the Canadian Convoy as a cult.
To a standstill. Dozens of trucks and other vehicles could be seen blocking the downtown area of Ottawa as protesters rallied against vaccine mandates, masks, and lockdowns.
That seems like an interesting way to spend your weekend.
The demonstrations were initially aimed at pushback against vaccine mandates for truck drivers crossing the U.S.-Canada border. But the movement escalated into an expression of disapproval with the Canadian government's COVID-19 policies.
Oh, that's terrible. How terrible.
Officials say several investigations are underway into reports of severe vandalism and criminal behavior, including the desecration of national monuments.
Oh, really? Like, for example, did they set any monuments on fire like leftists, Antifa, and BLM did in the United States? Did they topple statues down? Did they piss on statues? Did they shit on statues? Tell me what it is that they did to desecrate monuments in Canada.
Meanwhile, Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson said some protesters harassed a soup kitchen, demanding free meals because their refusal to wear masks meant they were not to...
Okay, so you can throw shit and piss at cops in Portland and all throughout the fruited plain, and that's not that bad. But if you demand free meals, well, that's terrible. That's worse than anything Antifa and BLM did, right? Of course, Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson said some protesters harassed a soup kitchen. Oh, no. Demanding free meals. Huh? Oh, no. For refusal to wear masks? And meant that they were not to order in the restaurants. Oh, God, that's horrible, horrible.
Order in restaurants. That soup kitchen tweeted COVID protesters were given meals to defuse the conflict and that this weekend's events have caused significant strain on our operations at an already difficult time.
So these anti-vaxxers actually took food from the mouths of the homeless.
Hungry, yeah.
Because they're so put upon. Because they have a vaccine. I'm just curious, again, where were these protests?
Right, I'm sure they set all those people on fire in the soup kitchens, and I'm sure that they tossed human feces in the soup kitchens. No, they didn't do that.
That's what people were...
By the way, this is Joe Scarborough and that other bint whose name I can't remember.
Required to get 5 vaccines to start school. Where were these protests when people were required to give their children 5 vaccines?
They were in the doctor's office getting vaccines.
They were in the doctor's office getting vaccines, and they were making fun of left-wingers on the West Coast for being loopy anti-vaxxers.
Okay.
Now they have met the enemy, and the enemy, their enemy, is themselves, because they've become what they hated.
No, the enemy is leftists, fucknuts.
They've become what they mocked, and now they're taking food from soup kitchens because they're so put upon.
Right, and do you think anybody in Canada wouldn't take a police report if one of these truckers actually stole something by force from them? No, it's Canada. It's not the U.S.
For being asked to do what they've been asked to do, required to do.
Did you hear what he said, though? Did you listen? They gave him food. That's terrible, mean, heinous, Terrible.
Their entire lives.
Coming up.
Faux umbrage. False, fake umbrage.
A cult.
Yes, it is. A historic...
Okay, so there you go. There you go. You guys are a cult. Kyle Johnston, how do you deal with that? You cultist.
Well, it was really hard for me not to laugh during that audio clip.
Oh, I expect you to laugh.
Yeah. A lot of what they said has been debunked already. Like harassing the soup kitchen, that never happened, right? They were saying it was against the vaccine, like this protest against the vaccine mandates. It's not. It's against all the mandates we've been having up here. It's against all the lockdowns. It's against the not being able to travel from province to province, which is actually against our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Not being able to go see our friends and family, not being able to work without getting this shot, which I should clarify. Like, I'm vaccinated because I just wanted to get it because I had friends suffer greatly from COVID. So I was like, okay, I'll go get the shot. And I'll never stop anybody from getting it, right? It's, your body, your choice, do whatever you want. But I don't believe the government, who doesn't know my body from, a hole in the ground, should tell me you have to get this in order to have a job. I have to get this in order to put food on your table. You have to get this to even go into a grocery store, which has happened in 2 provinces now, Quebec and New Brunswick, although I have heard New Brunswick drop that, and I think Quebec's dropping that as well here shortly because of the uproar they've had. I could be wrong on that. I haven't heard enough reports out of Quebec yet, but I know as of now, like Walmart's, Costco's, all those big stores, you can't even go in without the shot unless you're going straight to the pharmacy or straight to get food, and that's it. Can't stop and get whatever you need, buy a pair of pants or buy a thing of underwear because you're out or something like that, right? And it's just getting ridiculous in my mind.
It's getting very stupid. I have another audio cut right now. This is off of the Twitter feed from Candice Bergen. She's an MP, a member of Parliament in Canada, and she has this little audio cut, which is 1 minute and 42 seconds, where she sums up things rather nicely.
Mr. Speaker, all Canadians want to see a leader who will work to heal rifts, not further divide. A leader who will listen, even to those voices he might not agree with. A leader who will work to understand, not dismiss, name call, and gaslight. Contrary to some, there are thousands of passionate, patriotic, and peaceful Canadians on the Hill right now who just want to be heard. Will the Prime Minister extend an olive branch, and will he listen?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I think we all support free speech in this House, but there's a big difference
between
free
don't.
speech and inciting hatred, inciting
bullshit.
violence.
What a load of crap.
War memorials, Mr. Speaker, and I would hope my honourable colleague would denounce that in the clearest terms, Mr. Speaker. Those radical leaders are not really interested in free speech because they want to pretend as those vaccines don't work.
Okay, you are radical leaders. All of you truckers, listen up. In Canada, in the United States, your so-called leaders think that you are cultists. They think that you are extremists. Advocating for freedom is heresy and unacceptable, like this leftist fucknut in Canada is espousing right now.
On this side of the House, we know vaccines work. That's the gateway to freedom, and this government will do everything that we can to...
Okay, stop. Okay, let's say vaccines work. Let's say you want one, just like Kyle Johnston said. No one wants to stop him or anyone from getting a vaccine. You want it? Get it. If I don't want it, and I don't, and I haven't, then fuck off of my life, if you would, please.
To get there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And then she replies.
Of course, we all condemn hateful and destructive acts by a few at any protest. Whether it's beheading the statue of Queen Victoria in Manitoba, tearing down the statue of Sir John A. in Montreal, or putting flags...
Okay, stop right there. Kyle Johnston, did those things actually happen? You're in Canada.
Yes.
You would know better than me.
Yes, that actually happened during the Black Lives Matter protest for George Floyd.
Okay. So
No. Sorry. Let me correct myself. That wasn't that part. That was when they found the Indigenous children from our residential schools.
Okay.
That's what happened. That started happening. Sorry.
Okay,
I
that's
forgot
okay.
about that.
That's okay, because I want to be precise in this in terms of, because this is their point they're making. Someone or a series of someones are attempting to allude that you guys, truckers, are doing this. And the point I'm attempting to make and underline and italicize and embolden is, no, it's not you.
On Terry Fox, whether it's burning churches, whether it's wearing blackface, whether it's...
Oh, blackface. Now, that's a reference, by the way, folks, if you don't know, to Justin Trudeau, who wore blackface in college.
Flags are Nazi flags. We all condemn it. But I'm not talking about that, Mr. Speaker.
But you see, and do you understand, folks, how too many people want to conflate this kind of junk with the truckers who are in a convoy attempting to get freedom because it's impinging upon their job? Well, the other thing I discovered on, I think it was Facebook, is this is growing. It's growing. And this is exactly what leftists, Democrats, and people on the left in both nations, all nations, don't want. Because now here's a promo that I saw on Facebook that says, United Kingdom Freedom Convoy heading to London Saturday 5th, February 2022, starting in Scotland. Full details to be announced soon. Just what they fear. It's starting to spread, and that's exactly what they're starting to stop. Now, I have another article that I'd like to read, and then I'd like to have folks, my guest tonight is KYLE Johnston. He's a Canadian heavy haul trucker, and I'd like to have him weigh in on this. Number one, did it occur? And number two, thoughts and opinions. Because I have a story whose headline is this: Alberta tow truck companies refusing to assist RCMP in removing border blockade. Several tow truck companies in Alberta are, for various reasons, refusing to help authorities remove the blockade at the Canada-U.S. border. So, KYLE Johnston, number one, is that an accurate portrayal of what happened?
From the reports I have seen, that is accurate. Mind you, you have to keep in mind the reports I've seen is mostly independent reporters like Rebel News, which I know the left hates, the Counter Signal, Western Standard, and True North, I think, reported it as well. I could be wrong on that, but I have seen those reports. Same with, I've heard reports actually out in Ottawa as well, tow truck drivers refusing, pretty much saying, no, we support the truckers, they're peaceful, why would we go and upset them, right?
This is a story from, oddly enough, that you mentioned it, Rebel News. Canadian police seeking assistance of tow truck companies in the removal of trucks participating in the blockade of the Canada-U.S. border are coming up short due to the company's refusal to assist in dismantling the protest. As detailed by Rebel News, truckers have blockaded the roads in southern Alberta to protest the federal government's COVID-19 restrictions and mandates. So it's okay for the federal government to do that, but then this falls under my category of schadenfreude. And that's kind of laughing and giggling as you watch the dead bodies of your enemies float slowly past on the river in front of you. So it was okay when people supported left-wing causes, but now it's heresy. You're an apostate if you could possibly support or advocate or even give a glimmer of a guffaw to something like this. This is an audio cut. This is about a 1-minute audio cut of American truckers at a rally in Buffalo, New York, supporting the Freedom Convoy in Canada, with plans now, I understand, to go to D.C. Well, let's listen.
I understand you gentlemen are U.S. truckers, is that correct? Yes. Where are you from? Niagara Falls, New York. Why are you here today? To protest the mandate. What mandate? The mandate on the tax. Okay, it's for the freedom of the Canadians and Americans, the freedom of choice. All right, beautiful. Beautiful. And is there any plans for what's going on in Canada with the truckers going across the country? Is there any plans to descend on Washington, D.C. by the U.S. truckers that you're aware of? Yes. Yeah. When is that going to take place? That we can't say because we don't know for sure. Okay, but there is something in the works to do the same thing in the U.S. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, so this is spreading. Like I said, it's spreading, and leftists, they don't want that. They don't want that at all. So now that we're speaking to somebody directly in Canada, KYLE Johnston, and this is not just third hand, fourth hand, fifth hand from somebody in the U.S. who wants it to be so. KYLE Johnston, can you give me a little bit of background on the Canadian Convoy and the information that you have as to why it began in the first place? What's the Canadian Convoy about?
So the Canadian Convoy started basically a grassroots movement for the vaccine mandates for truckers cross-border. It started, I believe, not 100% sure who started it, so I'm not going to state. It just kind of all of a sudden popped up and everybody was supporting it. Basically what it was is there's going to be a bunch of truck drivers leaving from all across Canada. One side was going to start in Vancouver, British Columbia. One was going to come out of Prince Rupert, British Columbia, and start heading east. And then there was people coming out of Newfoundland, Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, Quebec, and start heading west. And they were all going to converge at Parliament Hill and pretty much just sit there and say, we're not moving until you lift the mandate for cross-border traffic. And then momentum started, and you know how all movement gain momentum, more and more people join in, and they say, well, we want this, we want that. And that's how it turned into, you know what, just let's go back to the way it was back in 2019, and nobody cared what everybody else did. You know, we just lived our lives. So that's pretty much what they're there for now, is just we're not leaving until you lift everything. And same with blockade down in Coots, Alberta, which is Sweetgrass, Montana, the border crossing there. They're saying the same thing. We're not leaving until you lift everything.
It's about doing your job. It's about the ability to do your job. And just like nurses, doctors, medical professionals have said, oh, you know, it's fine for us to not mandate vaxes. You were okay with us. You loved us in 2020 when we were doing our medical job, and you loved us in 2020 when we were doing our trucking job, because we got things to you, and you loved us then. Now, all of a sudden, magically, you don't love us, especially with Omicron is hitting people, and it's a lot more transmissible, but deaths are going down. And also the severity of Omicron is nothing like it was first with Delta. And so you loved us now, you loved us then, you hate us now. What's changed? The criticality is not like it was. Is that kind of in the ballpark, Kyle?
Yeah, it is. Like, that's one thing I've never been able to understand through all of this. Like, I vividly remember when the lockdowns happened. I was sitting in Indianapolis. Can't remember what I had on for a load. Oh, actually, I had a moonshine still that somebody bought, was bringing up. That's what it was. And they shut the borders down. And I remember my wife freaking out, thinking that I wouldn't be able to get back into Canada. And, of course, they can't stop me from entering the country because I am a Canadian citizen. And same with Americans going south. They can't stop you from entering your country because you're an American citizen. And then, of course, got back into Canada, and everything was kind of worked out. Okay, you know, essential services, doctors, truckers, firefighters, police are all allowed to, you know, do this without quarantining. And, for 2 weeks, we were all deemed as heroes. And now all of a sudden, you know, went from 2 weeks being heroes to we're the scum of the earth again. And nurses and firefighters and police, I think, have deserve a lot more respect than us truck drivers. Like, I admit that, because they're actually trying to help people, and we're just bringing them the supplies to help them. But it's one of those things. It's like, well, we're all part of a team here. If any one of these pillars fall, the whole house is going to come down, right?
That's absolutely true. And you just piqued a part of my brain where I thought of some new questions. So in 2020, KYLE Johnston, folks, and KYLE Johnston is my guest tonight. He is a Canadian heavy haul trucker. So KYLE, in 2020, when the coronavirus first hit, you were driving then, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So in 2020, go back, folks, put on your thinking caps. Back in 2020, lots of jobs were shut down. Cities were locked down. Businesses were shut down. Restaurants were shut down. So my guess would be, KYLE Johnston, how did you and other truckers manage to survive under those conditions? Because you didn't have many open restaurants. There weren't that many places to eat. Truck stops were closed. Maybe even rest stops were closed. Tons of people stopped working and moving. Oddly enough, most people seem to forget that. Am I being accurate in my portrayal of trucking in 2020?
Yeah, you're being accurate. I vividly remember not being able to get a shower for like a week because the truck stops would close the showers down. But I also remember some of the good is a lot of people would come in and feed us, because they knew restaurants were closed and they wouldn't serve food anymore at the truck stops. So there's actually a lot of mom and pop restaurants staying open, saying, we have room for 3 trucks, come on in, we'll feed you. It'll have to be outside, but we'll take an order and we'll bring it out to your truck, and then at least you can eat, right? We've actually, not me personally, but I have heard stories of random people opening up their homes so the truck driver can come in and have a shower, at least get clean, and then hit the road again. It's just one of those things that you'd be surprised where you'd get help from at a time like that. It was never from people you would expect. You know what I mean? It was always from people that just have a good heart, willing to, lend the shirt off their back just to keep you going, right? Because they understood that if, a nurse didn't go into work that day, somebody could die. The truck didn't deliver the food to the store. Grandma couldn't get her groceries. You know what I mean? It's just, like I said, it was all a group of people holding up the roof, and if one of the pillars fell, we were all kind of screwed, right?
Everything is dovetailing. Everything has always dovetailed. Everything will dovetail. You remove one leg of the table, and the things start to fall. I submit that it was primarily in 2020 when people began to realize just how important trucking and truckers are to our various respectful nations, to Canada, to the U.S., any other nation that we're talking about. Truckers have always been critical. They're part of the critical infrastructure because if you have it, wear it, see it, use it, it's a part of your life, it's in your house, it's in your business. Guess what? A trucker brought it.
Yeah, if
and that
you got it, a truck driver brought it.
That was in 2020. So tons of people stopped working, and they stopped moving. Well, guess what, folks? Truckers couldn't stop. Truckers didn't stop. And that was the kind of environment that you had with truckers in 2020. Now, all of a sudden, it's 2022, and you people are pond scum. You are lower than whale crap at the bottom of the Marianas Trench. You're disgusting. You are evil. You are terrorists. Most of you are white, so you're probably almost always white supremacist, extremist terrorists, and you are members of a cult. And you were called a cult here in the United States. So that's the nature of our media. What's the media been like in Canada, KYLE Johnston?
Well, they call us white supremacists left, right, and center, which I find laughable. I don't know what it's like in the States, but I know the Canadian trucking industry, a pretty big melting pot of nationalities and cultures and different races all driving trucks. Like I said, it's a big brotherhood, and we always accept everybody. Excuse me. a lot of people from the Middle East have come over, and they get into a truck and they start driving, and we all accept them because we're all here to do the same job, right? I've never met anybody who is that way that the media portrays us to be. I mean, prime example, if you go on Twitter and stuff and watch some of the independent reporters, you'll see it's a hodgepodge of people all coming together for the same cause. And yet, you know, they see one flag that doesn't represent us, and they pin it that the whole group's like that, right? So it's just one of those things where it's kind of hard to fight that, right?
We think it's that hard to fight. KYLE Johnston makes a very interesting point, and on the heels of that, when I come back, I don't know about Canada, and I'm going to ask him the question, but white supremacists in trucking in the United States? I'm going to point something out when I come back. I'm BZ, the Bloviating Zeppelin. That's KYLE Johnston. He is a Canadian heavy-haul trucker, and we'll be right back after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Southern Sense is conservative talk with Annie, the radio chick Ubellis as host and C.S. Bennett co-host. Informative, fun, irreverent, and politically incorrect. You never know where they'll go, but you'll love the journey. Annie is a top conservative host on Top Talk Radio and features some of the finest guests packed with important politicians and newsmakers. Listen every Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern, noon to 3 Pacific, on the SHR Media Network. Remember, Southern Sense is common sense.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Hi, this is Eric Thompson. Please check out my new Week in Review show, For Liberty's Sake, Saturday mornings, 10 a.m. Pacific Time. Check out forlibertysake.com.
Hey, are you guys listening? This is Shannon from Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media. I know you've been wondering where we are and what's been going on. Well, folks, that's right. We're back. So please join us 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday on SHR Media, on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, and Facebook Live at 11 a.m. on Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM at Facebook. You don't want to miss a minute. We've got lots of guests, lots of segments, and lots of interesting things. And let's face it, there's nowhere for you to go, so you might as well tune in. Again, Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. We're back live on the air on SHR Media, 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday, audio and Facebook Live, audio and video. Yes, we are going to do video. Facebook Live, Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Hope to see you soon.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And I'm back. I'm BZ, the Bloviating Zeppelin, and you are in the saloon tonight. Thanks for Whiskey Dale being in chat, Jack Alexander being in chat, and the Alaskan is in chat. Thanks to everybody for being in the chat room tonight. I'll be putting this show up later in podcast on all the usual suspects in terms of social media. And one of the major ones is Twitter. I'm on Twitter at BZEP, at BZEP. And tonight I have KYLE Johnston. He's a Canadian trucker that I found through Sean Lewis, who is new to trucking. I spoke to him last Tuesday, 1 week ago. And if you want to find out what's happening in the world of Canadian trucking with KYLE Johnston, go on to Twitter at Canada Heavy Haul. Canada Heavy Haul on Twitter. KYLE Johnston. All of a sudden, you made everything run in 2020. And now you damn truckers are whale crap. So that's funny. That's odd how that works out. You darned cultists. Let me play a cut here and see what I've got. This is from that aforementioned Rebel News. I think this is a cut that was from yesterday, January 31st, if I am not mistaken. I'm looking at a scene at the Couch Sweetgrass border crossing, closed both ways. Truckers are demanding an end to government mandates and say that they're not going to budge until that happens. And then this is a cut. That other one, I couldn't get the sound to work. Sorry, I'm not perfect. Anyway, I think this one is RCMP and tactical units headed to Couch, Alberta. Hundreds of truckers aren't budging, and let me see if there's some audio that's going on from here.
Yeah, we got the special ops coming through.
So the Canadian...
This is southbound.
Canadian government sending SWAT
just
units.
south of Milk River.
Great.
This is what's coming through.
Lovely. So I'm just kind of curious. We'll let that peter out here. I'm kind of curious. Hey, Canada, did you send SWAT units for BLM uprisings? My guess would be probably not. And then let's see. When was this? This is a cut also from yesterday about 11:07 a.m., January 31st.
There's no weakening, guys. They can leave. They can leave. But the only way I'm leaving is in a cruiser. Yes.
There you go.
You know what? 100%.
That's right.
You know what?
Who's
We're
here?
So who's got to stay? I'm staying. Who's staying?
And that sounds to me like basically a bunch of resolute truckers in Canada. Amazing. And then truckers are now talking about, this also was yesterday, a little bit after 11 o'clock in the morning, truckers talking about their decision to stand their ground.
You guys just came into a decision there that most of you guys are going to stay, and it seems like the compromise is opening a lane, is that correct?
Yes, we're going to open up the northbound lane and let the guys that come out of the U.S., we're going to let them go. We're going to open up that lane and let guys go. But they have to open up a lane on their end to let guys leave, because we're actually boxed in here right now. So they did not want to negotiate. So we're going to let that lane go, and then we're going to actually go talk to them and see if they're going to compromise. And
you said the police weren't willing to negotiate?
They were not willing to negotiate when we went down there to talk earlier. There was no negotiations allowed. They didn't want nothing to do with it. So we've read the charter that came in 2020. It says if we open a lane, we can stay here as long as we want. So that's what we're going to do.
Oh, by the way, cops, when you decide that you're going to get into those trucks, I hope you know how to run an Eaton or a Fuller transmission. Because you know what? Most of the trucks that you're going to be involved with, yeah, they're not automatics. I have another cut here. This is from, isn't that funny? I have a cut now, Kyle, from the Canadian Broadcasting Company. And we heard how stupid it was in the U.S. on MSNBC. Well, apparently CBC couldn't be left out of that stupid loop. So essentially what they're doing here is saying that, you know who's behind you? You know who's making... I heard this one. Yeah, you know who's making you jump and dangle like the stupid white supremacist puppets you are? Russia. Russia's... Seriously? Really?
I do ask that because, given Canada's support of Ukraine in this current crisis with Russia, I don't know if it's far-fetched to ask, but there is concern that Russian actors could be continuing to fuel things as this protest grows, but perhaps even instigating it from the outset.
Well, again, I'm going to defer to our partners in the public safety, the trained officials and experts in that area.
Yeah, because this guy didn't want to have anything to do with that allegation. Funny how that works. So, my God. Now, KYLE Johnston, it appears you doggone Canadian truckers are nothing but puppets. You're Putin's puppets. How do you feel about that?
once again, I think it's laughable. Like I said, it seems like that's always their go-to to try and affiliate us with the Russian. I mean, look at what happened down in the States when Trump was president. They tried for how many years to say there was Russian influence, and then there wasn't any. But the problem is, it's like, I believe it was Catherine McKenna, which was our, I can't remember her official title, finance minister. Maybe I could be wrong, so I apologize. I'm sure somebody will correct me on it. She said, you know, if you scream it louder and louder and just keep saying it, eventually people will believe you. And that's basically what they're doing right now, right? They just keep screaming it and saying it and repeating it, and eventually people are going to believe it, right?
It's funny that you should mention that. There's a quote by Joseph Goebbels, who was.
Yeah, I know who he is. My great uncle popped a shot off at him in World War II.
Really? Oh,
really?
That's a story.
Yeah. He always used to say if he was able to hit him, World War II would have ended in 1942.
Oh, that's funny. I got kicked off of Facebook when I put a couple of these quotes in from Joseph Goebbels, who was Hitler's minister of propaganda. One of the quotes was, "This is the secret of propaganda. Those who are to be persuaded by it should be completely immersed in the idea of the propaganda without ever noticing that they are being immersed in it." Funny how that works with leftists. Also, he wrote, "The most brilliant propagandist technique will yield no success unless one fundamental principle is borne in mind constantly. It must confine itself to a few points and then repeat them over and over and over." Mm-hmm. That got me banned from Facebook. Why? Because it hits too close to home for the propaganda disseminated by Facebook and most leftists on Twitter. Let me ask you a few more questions. We've got about maybe 20 more minutes. KYLE Johnston, are you okay for another 20 minutes?
Oh, by all means.
Okay. All right. I think I got enough questions and stuff to talk about until then. So let's kind of, again, start at the start. We hear lots of stories about shortages all over. And I am in the process right now of moving from California, always spell it with a K, to a free state somewhere near Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, right around in there. And actually, I have a home there. I've purchased one already. I sold my home up in the Sierra Nevada mountains in 2021. Got what I considered to be a fair price for it. Moved all of my furniture from my house, my cabin. I was about at the 4,000-foot elevation in the Sierra Nevada mountains in a little town near Alta, which nobody's ever heard of, and that was just happy by me. But my house has moved. I have a new house in a free state, and we're waiting to sell my wife's house in Sacramento, California, and then we will be finally moved up there. So we've been to our new free state a bunch of times in the process of moving and also for prospecting for a new house. And we've discovered that in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, they're all in the same bit that we are. That is to say, there's a shortage of workers. There are a plethora of jobs, but few people to take the jobs. It's affecting everybody. There are shortages all over. There were shortages back then. I made the mistake. I don't know, maybe you can relate to this, maybe you can't. I got to my new free state in my new house, which was built in 2007, so it's the newest house I've ever had. And I ordered locally a dining room table. So I got delivered a dining room table last year in June. And I still don't have 6 dining chairs for my dining room table because who knows where the fuck those things are. And they can't find out. They don't know where they are.
they're still on a boat.
They could be. They could be on a slow tramp steamer from China somewhere in the Caspian Sea, for all I know. And I'm not sure that I'll ever get them, but that also reminded me, if you want to buy something and it ain't in stock right then, don't be silly. Don't back order it. But that's all because of the stories that we hear about shortages, truck shortages, driver shortages, backups, delays, supply chain disasters, logistics problems, empty store shelves, the inability to move goods and products on our U.S. highways. So a couple of questions, Kyle Johnston. You referred to it earlier. I believe, and Sean confirmed a week ago Tuesday, we've got a driver shortage in the U.S. How are you guys situated for drivers in Canada?
We have a shortage. Probably not as bad as the U.S. because we have a lot smaller population, obviously. There's probably about 150,000 truckers in Canada, maybe, plus or minus a bit. I'm not 100% sure on that number, but we could definitely use probably 50,000, 60,000 more just for the freight alone that we have here. And that's not even including cross-border freight, right? I've actually noticed myself the produce starting to run out up here. Especially in the winter months. All our produce comes from California, Texas, Florida, Georgia, like all the southern states that actually can grow year-round, right? Even vehicle parts are having an issue. I mean, I don't mean to kind of go off on a tangent here, but we're talking about the shortages. I needed a new cylinder head for my vehicle, and it took 6 months to get it here because they had none left in Canada. They actually had to find somebody. I think they got it out of Tennessee and shipped it up air freight once they finally got their hands on it. So it's not just food that people are going to have to worry about. It's basic everyday things you don't even think about, right? Like I never thought I would have to wait 6 months for a cylinder head for my vehicle, right?
That's one of the things that Sackhead Sean was talking to me about. Is he had a truck that went down. They had to wait a week for a part. He was assigned a new truck because they couldn't get the part for that. So all of these things, as I indicated in the first hour, all of this dovetails together. And it's not being made any better. So clearly in Canada, just like the U.S., there is a driver shortage. Is there a what I mean by that, a tractor shortage in Canada as well?
Yes. Prime example, company I worked with, desperate need for new tractors. I was talking with the president there, probably 6 months ago. And he said, I could order, 6 new trucks today. They would be a 2023 year model before they showed up. He said, we just can't get any trucks. And that's why we just using the ones we have and just keep trying to maintain them to keep them on the road, right? It's one of those things. There's a guy I know out of Texas. The only reason they got new trucks is because they bought the spilled slots, I think, 2 years ago. And that's why they were able to get new trucks. Trying to think what else I've seen. I know a lot of companies, they're having a hard time getting new equipment.
Let me ask you this. I don't know the answer to this. Usually I'm like an attorney. I like to know the answer to my questions before I ask them, but this one I really don't know the answer. Kyle Johnston, isn't Alberta one of your prime agricultural areas? Don't you grow, I'm not exactly sure what crops, but isn't Alberta one of the bigger agriculture areas in Canada?
Yes, it is one of the bigger ones. BC has some agriculture. Saskatchewan's almost all agriculture. Same with Manitoba. But we grow mostly crops for export. We grow a lot of wheat. We grow a lot of barley. We grow a lot of canola. Some corn. There's a lot of corn in southern Alberta, not so much what the further north you get. But like I said, most of it is for export over to Europe. right? I think a lot of it actually goes to China, too. I could be wrong on that, though.
Okay.
I think China and a lot of Europe, I think a lot goes south to you guys as well. If you look into, if you ever have time, look into CWB, the Canadian Wheat Board, and that would tell you where most of our crops go.
Okay. The other thing, and Kyle Johnston, I want you to confirm or deny this too. Historically speaking, and it's only gotten worse over the past 10, 20, 30 years, having a supply of fill in the blank in a warehouse is a thing that used to exist, but now the margins in the supply chain are so thin that having a constant rotation of transportation to keep the parts and supplies up is critical more than others. What I mean by that is, in the old days, you used to have a warehouse full of parts that people didn't mind sitting in that warehouse. Now, because of taxation, etc., people, companies, corporations can't afford to let parts, products, etc. sit around. They have to consistently move them, and therefore our supplies and the supply chains are running on the thinnest of strings and margins. So that's contributing to the supply chain crisis, which is contributing to the trucking crisis, which is contributing to the shortage of parts, which is contributing to the shortage of trucks, the shortage of drivers, the shortage of food, the shortage of products. And then there's this. What have I got? About another 10 minutes? I got about another 10 minutes before the end of the show. This also is going to factor, well, fuel is factoring into all of this. Inflation is factoring into all of this. Obviously, transportation, shipping, containers, ports. The largest port in Canada on the West Coast is the Port of Vancouver. So, Kyle, do you happen to know anything about the Port of Vancouver? Because we on the West Coast in California, Portland, in Oregon, Long Beach, L.A., the Port of Oakland in California, we spell it with a K, we're resoundingly screwed on the West Coast in California. What our glorious transportation secretary, Pete Buttigieg, has decided to do once he came back from maternity leave is he decided to mandate that the ships move 30 miles offshore. Part of that he never wanted to tell anybody is so that you can't see how many damn ships are waiting to get into ports. Because it's easy to rent a helicopter and fly around in the air, or a drone and show all the ships off Los Angeles or Long Beach or Oakland. But you got to rent a helicopter and pay a lot of money to fly 30 miles out to show all the hundreds of ships that are out there, and most people don't know that.
Yep.
Here's another fly in the ointment, folks. We have individuals in D.C. who are apparently just angling to go into and set boots into Ukraine. If that happens, I posit that once the Olympics are over in China, once he watches what happens with Putin in Ukraine and how Biden cocks up that situation, I would wager you can almost be assured that Xi Jinping, once he sees how weak Biden is going to make a foray into Taiwan. What's in Taiwan, folks? What's in Taiwan? Why is Taiwan important? I mean, you can get your shirts anywhere, right? Yeah, except who's the number one chip maker on the planet? And where is it? It's in Taiwan. What runs on chips? Oh, everything. Everything is computerized. The Internet of Things. If you like things now, oh, wait. It's about to get way fucking delicious. If you think there are shortages now and people can't get parts, and you can't get food, and you can't get supplies, and you can't move things because your truck needs a part, or maybe it needs a computer, or maybe that computer piece needs to be replaced, or computers go down, or servers go down, and you need more chips, say, or new cars need new chips. This is just one aspect. Guess what you won't be getting from Taiwan, the number one chip maker on the planet, if Chinese Xi Jinping decides to go into Taiwan, emboldened, as apparently Putin is and Xi Jinping is, by the resolute and stalwart Biden and his regime. If that happens, buck up, because things are about to get nautical for a while. Oh, and this year, if you're going to buy a house, the Fed is going to kick up the prime. They've already said that's going to happen about 3 times. So do you see how magically, folks, everything is intertwined? Everything is intertwined in this nation and in Canada and in the UK. Let's talk about Germany just for a second, because this popped into my brain. What did President Trump offer Germany a year or two ago? About 3 years ago. Because Germany wasn't paying its 2% minimum fair share for NATO. So President Trump embarrassed Merkel publicly and also said, by the way, you'd be really wise if you were to start buying petroleum from the United States of America, because Russia is going to blackmail you very shortly. Well, if Russia decides to blackmail Germany very shortly through Gazprom, through pipelines, they're going to be not producing much oil, or maybe not getting much oil from Russia, because oddly enough, Germany just decided to shut down 3 electrical power plants that were nuclear. They willingly shut them down. And you can't get gas, and you can't get petroleum. Now, do you think that anything that happens in Russia that affects Ukraine, or that affects Germany, or that affects France, or major NATO players is going to have any kind of an effect over here in the U.S. and Canada? Oh, hell yes, it will. Everything that I want you to understand from this show tonight, which is why I wanted to have KYLE Johnston here, everything dovetails. Everything is intertwined. If you recall, President Trump and Canada and every other nation would be wise to be as independent as possible. What's the first thing that Biden and his regime did January 20th when they first stepped into the Oval Office? They killed the Keystone XL pipeline.
Yeah, and that pissed a lot of people off.
That pissed a lot of Canadians off, and a lot of employees off, and a lot of people in Canada who were depending on jobs and or who had jobs. Because for the first time in quite a long time, the United States was not just energy independent. It was, its number one export was fuel from the Chemical Coast around Houston. We exported fuel. And we were energy independent. And everybody was poo-pooing, oh, you can expat all sorts of things out to China or to Ireland or to India. Let them make some things. You're paying the price for that right now, folks. You're paying the price. And one of the major reasons that I wanted to have KYLE Johnston on tonight is to illustrate everything is affected. Everything is, all the little machinations all line up and everybody's affected. It's not just the U.S. It's Canada as well, which is why the Canadian truckers are making the move that they are, and they're starting to become successful. They're starting to speak up and push back. And that's a great thing. Now, oddly enough, in the United States, and I suspect in Canada, it was a bad thing. Oh, it was a good thing when leftists set our nation on fire for multiple months in the summer of 2020. That was fine. Destroying statues, nifty. Pointing lasers at the eyes of cops, fine. Setting cops on fire, fine. Assaulting a federal court building for literally weeks and months on end, nifty, no problem. No arrests. No big deal. Billions and billions of dollars in property losses in the United States, just fine, and completely ignored. But to have Canadian truckers try to assert any amount of freedom, because as KYLE Johnston indicated, he got vaccinated, cool. You want to get vaccinated? Get vaccinated. I don't. Shake hands and come out fighting. That's fine. But once people start to push back or demand a little bit of independence on their own, you're watching what's happening right in front of your eyes. And if you think, oh, that's only in the United States, oh no, it's affecting everybody. So, KYLE Johnston, a Canadian heavy haul trucker, it was great to have you on tonight, and I thank you very much for being here, sir.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Nice to have that open dialogue, right? It's the only way you can get the information out.
That's it. And folks, as opposed to listening to what people customarily term the mainstream media, get your news everywhere. Everywhere.
Both sides.
Don't rely on just one source. Get your news everywhere. True in the United States, true in Canada as well. You've been a gentleman all through the night, KYLE Johnston. So God bless you, sir. Be safe in your driving, and take care. Sure. And thank you for being here tonight.
Not a problem. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you, sir. That was KYLE. I'm BZ. You're still in the saloon, for a couple more minutes at least. And I leave you with this.
Monsieur has been locked!
So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct right here on the SHR Media Network. If you want to contact me, you can find me on Twitter at BZEP, at BZEP, and on my blog at bloviatingzeppelin.net. Promotional consideration is by Lockheed Martin Skunk Works and by the Boeing Company. If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going. Tiaras are by My Little Pony. Thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle One refueling team, with whom I will be consorting in about 10 minutes. Because from this desk where I broadcast to the refrigerator is about 10 feet right over there, as opposed to the half hour that it used to take for me to get here from the studio in downtown Sacramento. So thank you for listening live tonight. Thanks to KYLE Johnston for being here tonight. Thanks for being involved in the chat room, and thanks for listening in podcast, because otherwise it was pretty much too damn late for you. God bless, take care, be safe, everybody.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children. Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night. Good night, Jimbo.
Good night, and good luck.